So good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We're going to use a microphone today so everybody can pick us up. We have some recording as well. So my name is Scott Murray. I'm the superintendent here at Spring Branch ISD, and I want to thank you for being here today. And I want to take just a minute to let you know who's in the audience today. We have gathered together a group of school districts from around the region. So Houston Independent School District is with us today, Galveston Independent School District, Brazosport Independent School District, Alief Independent School District, Dickinson Independent School District, Humboldt Independent School District, and Spring Branch Independent School District are all seated in the room. We also have parents and community volunteers that are deeply engaged in this effort that are joining us today. And again, you will hear from several folks today. We'll introduce those folks as they speak. And our story today revolves around school finance. And our state legislature, both the House and the Senate, are busy engaging in the body of work today regarding school finance. And there's a critical decision that they are about to make. And that decision is about something that seems simple, but yet for us is incredibly complex and would have significant impact upon how we do business in our school districts. And that is simply the use of current year versus prior year property values in making decisions as to how we will be funded. For Spring Branch ISD, we anticipate that simple decision would cost the district about $7 million. And that's $7 million that our trustees and our system would be able to utilize to invest in doing good things for our children. And if we look at the districts that are seated in the room today, that dollar amount would mean something different for each individual. So I want to use an example I used with a group of teachers yesterday to explain what this means, current year versus prior year values. So yesterday I was with a group of teachers and talked to them about their paycheck. And I said, imagine, teachers, if we told you what we think we're going to pay you this year, but we're not going to tell you for sure until the end of the year. And so as a teacher, you plan your budget on what you think you're going to be paid. But at the end of the year, in your very last paycheck, we're going to settle up with you. And we might actually give you a little bit more money than you thought you were going to get. But we might also give you a little bit less money than you thought you were going to receive. And so I saw the look of terror come across the faces of our teachers to imagine a concept in which they were given a salary that they thought they were going to earn, but it would be the end of the year before they knew what that salary was. And for us as a school system, that's what we face right now. The use of current year values to help us determine a budget would put us in that predicament. We would operate for an entire year of what we think we're going to receive in the form of revenue, but it would be the end of the year before we would actually determine and know what we would be able to utilize in our kids. And so what that would force us to do is be potentially a bit more conservative on the dollars that we would be spending on our children. Because we might actually, at the end of the year, realize we would receive much more money. And a wise CFO once told me, Scott, we should always use this year's money to invest in this year's children. But in the use of current year values, we wouldn't even know what this year's money is. And so I could imagine myself as a superintendent at the end of the year realizing that I actually had much more money to spend. And I could imagine what I could have done as a superintendent, the investments that I could have made in children. But I wouldn't find out about those investments until the very end of the year. And again, in our system, that potentially could have been $7 million that we could have invested in more staff members for our students. We could have invested in enriching programming opportunities for kids, in investing in resources for students and additional personnel for our kids. So that money could have gone to many different directions, but we would not know that because of the use of current year values. In the state of Texas today, we use prior year values, and so we build a budget based upon what we know to be true. And as we operate for a school year, we know the revenue that we're going to receive, and we're able to make really smart and wise decisions with the money that we have. And so today we are asking our legislators, those that are in conference committee talking about this very issue at this very moment, to consider the use of prior year values as they look at the school finance system in the state of Texas. And that would help us as superintendents, as school boards, and as communities to make much better decisions on behalf of our children. I'm going to introduce Kelly Moulton. Kelly is the superintendent of Galveston ISD, and she faces a similar situation. I'm going to let her tell the Galveston ISD story. So Kelly.
Thank you, Dr. Murray. So yes, I concur with so much that he has to say about, first of all, what is current versus prior, and the simple term that he put that in so that we can all understand. We all manage our own personal budgets, but for those of us that manage multi-million-dollar budgets for public school systems, it is even more important. The trust of the community is in us in order to have that efficient use of property tax money. That's how schools are funded, property tax. And when we went into this session, we were very, very excited about the combined meeting of our leaders that said, we have a promise. Not only are we going to work on property tax reform, but we're also going to work on public school finance reform. And we trusted in that promise. And we want to be here to be able to help those leaders get us to the finish line. Let's not get confused along the way and put other things in place. House Bill 3, which is now in conference committee between the Senate and the House, came out of the House in a version we felt as school people very good about. It used prior year values in order to meet the promise that our leaders put in front of us at the beginning of the session. We are happy to continue to support that and want to be able to see that to the finish line and not get confused along the way. As Dr. Muri said, we are entrusted with the efficient use of those monies, and having prior year values means that we can fulfill that for our communities. I don't know if you heard in his introduction of those of you in the room, a slight redundancy, because he kept saying independent school district. Yes, but how important is that? Independent school district, because we have a responsibility to our communities to be able to be accountable to them. Who knows better how to spend the money in the community than those of the community? We're trusted in that, and we believe in that, and want to be able to make that happen for our communities. So as we look at that decision that that conference committee is making right now, we have a plan on the table that will bring local discretion and accountability to a position where there's more money in the system, keeps that flexibility so that we can move our communities forward, and delivers on the promise that was made about real financial reform in public school. You know, it's never happened without a lawsuit. It's time to be able to support that and help them finish. We want that to happen, and we want our legislators, our lawmakers, to understand that the practitioners, those that have been in the business and doing this work really well and really hard and for our children, can offer a perspective, and our perspective matters, and that's why we're here today. So thank you all. I'm glad that you're here to support this. I hope they're listening in Austin. I know we're sending lots of messages to them. We want to make sure that we are all part of the solution. Dr. Muri?
Thanks, Kelly. It is interesting when you think about the districts that are here today. We have Chapter 41 districts, which in the state of Texas are considered property wealthy districts. We have Chapter 42 districts, so districts that in the state of Texas are considered districts that don't have property wealth to the degree of others. We have large districts in the room and small districts in the room. We have districts that represent very diverse groups of students and very diverse communities. But yet we're sitting in the same room together because we are in complete agreement on this issue and use of prior year values as we make smart financial decisions on behalf of our students. Kelly also used the words local control. An independent school district is a school district that values and believes in local control, receiving dollars from the state of Texas that are invested in a local community based upon the decisions of a local school board and a local community. And so today I'd like to introduce Minda Caesar. Minda is a trustee member here in Spring Branch ISD, and she's going to share in a couple of words about local control and about what local school districts, how we are investing the dollars that we receive from the state of Texas. So, Minda.
So local control is a very important issue to us here in Spring Branch. We are very, very proud of our financial performance. We always get the highest rating on our financial, is it the STAR? The STAR report. But despite the fact that we have not raised property tax since 2010, despite the fact that we run a modified zero-based budget process, despite the fact that we are, I like to think, extremely fiscally conservative in Spring Branch, we are looking at a $24 million deficit for the upcoming school year based on the current school finance system. So as a result, school finance was our board's #1 priority going into this legislative session. And I would just like to take a moment to say thank you to the Commission on Public School Finance that met for an entire year studying this problem. And I would also like to thank Chairman Huberty and the House Committee and Senator Taylor and the Senate Committee for all the work that they are doing at this moment to try and fix this very broken school finance system. Spring Branch is a Chapter 41 district, and that is the reason that we are facing a $24 million deficit. When you start talking about current year versus prior year values, this becomes even more important. So even if we can fix the Chapter 41 recapture issue, having that level of uncertainty around our budget when we're already pretty fiscally conservative means that we are not going to know for sure how much money we have when we sit up here to spend on kids in our district. We have lots of different district priorities, and so we're going to have to play a little bit of a guessing game with how much money we have to address those priorities if they switch to current year values. Also, just as a property owner, I know I fight my property tax every year. I hope we all do too. I really encourage it. Think about all the people that do that. So that causes all the variability between current year values. If they go out with current year values and then we all go out and protest our property tax, that's where the variability comes from, right? Is we're not going to know how much money we have. So then we have to start looking at our programs. What kinds of programs are we not going to be able to fulfill because we're not sure we have that money? It's a very big issue. Austin is trying to make it sound like it's a very small accounting issue. It might be for the state, but on a local level, with local control, I mean, we need every single dollar, and we try and put every single dollar that we have into our children. So.
Thank you, Minda. We also have an understanding that this issue not only affects leaders in school systems, and it affects trustees in school systems, it also affects moms and dads. And so we have a parent with us from Houston Independent School District today. And Heather Golden is going to come and share really the parent perspective and as an advocate for the kids and the families in HASD. So Heather.
Thank you. And thanks for allowing me to talk about what this looks like as a mom. I have 2 girls in middle school. It's a thing. But what I want to talk about is how important it is to fund our kids' future and how if we switch to current year values, we will not be doing that. It will erase some of the amazing gains that were made in House Bill 3 through our leadership, which we are so thankful for. So thankful for Huberty and for Speaker Bonin and all the work and priority they put into this session. It is so very important. I'm very concerned that this will not result in more money for our kids in the schools. Talking about being conservative in your budgeting, I can very much see trustees and superintendents choosing to not invest as much in a school building because they don't want to have to pull resources back. And they want consistency at the campus level. My kids sit in a choir class with 60 other children right now because my principal, who is highly skilled and amazing, has to make hard choices. This is not going to fix that. And I want to see more money at the campus level. I want to see more money coming from the state share. My understanding is that this accounting trick, or whatever you want to call it, this is my words, accounting trick, will save the state $1.8 billion. So to me, what that says is the state is abdicating their responsibility for that $1.8 billion rather than which then puts more pressure on me as a property owner and a taxpayer. And it doesn't help my children. So to me, I don't see how this is a win for kids. And what I want is a win for kids. Yeah, that's it. That's
Good job.
I very much, yeah.
So I'm going to take your last words, all kids. The issue that we're talking about today isn't just a Spring Branch ISD issue or a HISD issue or a Galveston ISD issue. This is an issue for the 1,200 school districts in the state of Texas. The use of current year values versus property versus prior year values will impact every single school district in our state. And so that's why we, across the state of Texas, are joining together today to advocate and to help our legislators, our decision makers, consider and strongly use prior year values as we make this decision, because it affects every single child. And in our state today, that's 5.4 million children. We want to thank our state legislature. Their wisdom 2 years ago to create the School Finance Commission started us on a really positive journey, and we saw good things happen, good recommendations made to our state legislature. We saw members of our House create House Bill 3, and as Kelly said, there are great things in House Bill 3 that would do that would make a significant investment in children across the state of Texas. And so we ask that the members of the House and the Senate, those in conference committee today, consider the use of prior year values so that the dollars, that $1.8 billion that it generates, would be invested in schools rather than be taken from schools. Again, that's $1.8 billion, the shift between current year values and prior year values. That money simply leaves school districts and would go to the state. And so we ask that that money remain in school districts, and that we'll do that if we use prior year values. And so that is our message today, and our plea to the members of the House and the Senate, that they would consider the use of prior year values in the funding formulas for the state of Texas. We would be happy to entertain any questions that any of our audience members have today. And again, I'm available, Kelly's available, Minda's available, Heather's available as well. So happy to entertain any questions. Okay. We will hang around for a few minutes. If you have some individual questions, happy to come up and chat about this issue, and appreciate your advocacy and support for children in our state. Yes, ma'am?
Yes. So it's 1.8 billion this year alone.
This biennium.
For the biennium, for the budget. So, and going forward, it just creates that giant, huge lag, because, I mean, property tax deadlines aren't due until next week, per se, and I know you guys have been working on Spring Branch budget for the past month or so. And so just going forward, does the state have anything else to gain other than this money that apparently they need now?
So the question is really, what is the gain? What is the state's gain in this opportunity? The state's gain is $1.8 billion on the backs of 1,200 school districts across the state of Texas. And so that is the state gain. The loss is a loss to 1,200 school districts and 5.4 million children across the state. The long-term implication of this is the significant challenge that we face as school leaders and as trustees in creating budget opportunities every single year, creating a budget that is based upon what we think and not necessarily what we know. Again, we would not be able to settle up until the end of a school year. That's when we would understand exactly what our revenue would look like. And so it puts us in a precarious situation as we make financial decisions for children and for a community based upon what we think rather than what we know. And so that the inability for us to make concrete and solid investment decisions to be effective and efficient is greatly hindered by the use of current year values. So significant long-term implications for us.
Does the state think that all these different school districts have huge rainy day funds that they can play with to float the difference?
The question is, does the state think that school districts have large rainy day funds to work with? I am not sure what the state thinks about that. I know that we have many elected officials in both the House and the Senate that fully understand the financial situations that we are in and they've been strong advocates for public school systems. But clearly not everyone understands the current financial situations of our school districts. I have had my own colleagues from other districts across the state talk about if the school finance bill passes in some forms, they will be forced immediately to go out for a tax ratification election, because even though they may be receiving money from the state, it may be far less than what they actually need. So they will have to immediately go out to their taxpayers to ask for more money. And that is the predicament that this situation could put some school districts in across the state.
So if you stop and think about prior years and current year values, it's a little bit like a clawback, right? So House Bill 3 is saying, look, we're putting all this more money into education, but then if they switch to current year values, they're just clawing some of it back. So they'll say we put this much in education, but then it's going to cost all the districts $1.8 million over the first biennium.
So I want to add what I've been told is that this is in order to make the property tax reform work. Property owner, get it. I would look at my values too, and certainly want to make sure that we have some reform in that way. But I don't believe it has to be an either or. We've put something that's been put in front of us that accomplishes both of those in a meaningful way. And let's continue to push that to get to the finish line. I don't want to give up on school districts in order to have a lower property tax bill. I want it to work together.
Other questions, anybody? All right. Again, we'll be around if you have other questions. Happy to chat. But thank you for your investment in our kids, and thank you for your attention today. It's a significant issue. We'll watch what happens in our state today, and hopefully good things will happen for our kids. Appreciate you.